G'day everyone, it's the Two Ordinary Cops and we are back. Now, I could go into and talk about what I've been up to, but everybody's going to sit there and just say, Schultzy, shut the fuck up. We want to listen to what's happening today. So, Damo, do you want to kick it off?
Yeah, mate. So I think we're at episode 3 of what we'll probably call the Zac Rolfe series.
Yep.
So basically, in the last 2 episodes, we've spoken about obviously Zac, the lead up to it. A few incidents, a few things that have occurred through your career, and what you'd done early on in your life, and everything else, and then gone through the incident itself. Spoken about the shooting. So that was in the last episode. Really concentrated on the shooting, the aftercare. And what went on. And we started to touch on the fact just on what happened after that. But I think we might recap from the Sunday morning post-shooting about what occurred from there. And like sticking with the Two Ordinary Cops sort of mantra, I suppose, it's about the normalisation of the fact that forget a Caucasian police officer, it's that a man here doing his job has now been charged with murder and is now facing all of that. So welcome, mate. Welcome back.
Hey, well, thank you, boys. Thank you again for having me.
All good, yeah. So, I mean, last time we finished off, we sort of spoke about how things were just rushed. To me, it was there was an investigation process that didn't make sense to me. I felt that there was almost like a push to have you charged where there didn't need to be. So, I think what we'll do, mate, if you want to just recap that, like we'll go through, obviously the fact that you were arrested, and maybe even start off there, like you've now been arrested. What's going on from there, if you're happy?
Yeah, for sure. Well, the shooting, again, like going back, the shooting was on a Saturday night. By Sunday morning, I'm back at home. I wake up back at home. I go into the station on Sunday morning and have my organised meeting with a police psychologist. By the end of that meeting, I'm cleared to go back to work by the psych. I hang out in the muster room for a little bit, see some people, end up seeing one of the assistant commissioners, speak briefly. Now, I was rostered for 2 days off from that point, just as part of the roster, and due to go back to work on Wednesday. At that point, that's all I thought was going to occur. I was waiting to be basically given a direction to do an internal interview with professional standards commands. And for I'm not sure most of your listeners would know this, that for a criminal, if someone is interviewed criminally, they can refuse to answer. But internally, through professional standard commands, where we have to provide answers, but those answers generally can't be used, or they're not allowed to be used in a future criminal investigation. So I was waiting to basically for that process to begin by professional standards command. But I was sent home, basically had the 2 days off. Throughout that time, it was just kind of strange. Some detectives were sent down from Darwin to begin the investigation. I had a couple meetings with the commander, the commissioner of Alice Springs Station at my house, and they were basically just trying to push me to take some time off work. And we came to an agreement that I would take off till Friday, and then I would return to work the following weekend. So instead of going back on Wednesday, I go back on Saturday. On the Monday, the detectives from Darwin were already down in Alice Springs, and they'd started their investigation. Because was given the extra days off, and I was basically living with my cousin at the time, my mum and my aunt decided to come visit. Obviously, it was a big deal, being stabbed, getting in a shooting, taking someone's life. So, yeah, my mum and my aunt decided to come up to Alice Springs and just spend some time with me and my cousin. They came up on Tuesday, I believe. Yeah, they came up on Tuesday because on Tuesday morning, because everything was basically going normal for me. There was no issue. Everything expected based off the bosses, everything that was coming at me, all the messaging was that I was to return to work in a few days. Looking back on it, I should have seen a bit more of the snakiness that was going on. But at the time, I didn't think anything was nefarious was occurring. So Tuesday morning, I wake up with the association members knocking on my door, letting me know that my name and my photo had been released on social media by someone in the community, and therefore now there's like a safety risk going on. So there's a number of meetings on Tuesday throughout the day about like my movements, and the assistant commissioner and the commander kept trying to push me to go up to Darwin. And I figured at this point, obviously because my name was out there, regardless of what was going to happen, I wouldn't be going back to work on Saturday. So I figured there'd be some time off. But if there's going to be time off, for me personally, it wouldn't be at Darwin. It'd be elsewhere. So I kind of I told them there's no, I'm not going to go to Darwin. I'd just go elsewhere, take a few weeks off. But then I ended up being directed on Tuesday evening to go up to Darwin, and obviously a direction by your bosses is you can't refuse it. So I was under the guise of the for my welfare, for my safety, the move up to Darwin. But if you look at the investigators' notes, so when I say the investigators, there's investigators now in Alice Springs, and this is like the regular major crime homicide team. From their point of view, their notes say, and their statements later say, that it's a justified shoot based on the evidence that they have, the body-worn video and the statements that they have. They were ordered to arrest me if I attempted to leave Alice Springs, and they refused. Then there's the secondary team that's been set up in Darwin, and on Monday they're already speaking about in their notes that they may have to move me to Darwin in order to enact the arrest, because their notes say that they thought there'd be a negative outcome for the investigators in Alice if they were to arrest me in Alice. But the investigators in Alice had just refused to arrest me based off the evidence. They even mentioned, the Darwin team even mentioned that there would be likely a belief that the move to Darwin would be seen as like a malicious move. But it was purely based on welfare, because as you know, all the cops, everyone's covering their ass in their notes. So anyway, I get moved up to Darwin on the Tuesday night, and then on that same day, we find out later that there's the same day, or maybe the Wednesday morning, because the chief minister had put in the head of ICAC to oversee the investigation, the head of the Independent Commission Against Corruption, to oversee the investigation into the shooting. There'd been a meeting with the head of ICAC, the head of anti-Aboriginal justice, like the director, I believe, some police commanders and up. And basically in that meeting, the head of ICAC is ordering the police to arrest me. And there's never, as far as I can tell, and I've seen, there's never been an investigation into why the head of ICAC, who was put in that position of overseeing the investigation by the chief minister, was ordering the police to do so. Why was the head of anti-Aboriginal justice in that meeting? Now, the police have been asked about it, and they say, it occurred and that it didn't have any issue, or it didn't have any influence on them. But obviously, after I was arrested, they emailed him saying, "Hey, Rolfe's been arrested as per your desires." But anyway, Tuesday, I'm sent up to Darwin, and I'm staying on the police base up there, the PMC. Everything again, it's all going a bit normal. On the Wednesday, nothing's happening. No one's telling us what's going on. So we're getting a bit stir crazy because there's not much to do. I end up going for just a run in the Arvo around base. And Tuesday, November, November in Darwin is muggy as, hot as. So I come back to the accommodation disgustingly sweaty. And basically not long after I walk in the door, and my mum was staying in the same kind of unit. That's when we get a knock at the door, and 5 detectives rock up. No one's got body cam on. Knock up, walk in the door, and basically just say, "Hey, yep, Zac Rolfe, you're under arrest for murder," in front of my mum and all that. So that's how it went down.
Jeez.
Yeah, so from there, I think, because obviously in that moment, you're feeling, I already kind of knew this was going to go bad, and they moved too fast. You can tell at this point, but my feelings didn't matter. Obviously, you feel like spitting a dummy and having a crack and blowing up because you knew you were doing your job, you knew you did your job well, and they're going to do this to you. But I had to worry about my mum. Obviously, I didn't want to make the situation worse. So I remember I just hugged my mum, gave her a big smile, and just I told her, hey, they're moving too fast. They've fucked up. Everything's going to be all right. And I just gave her a number to call, one of the guys in the cave up the road. I said, call this number. He'll be down here in a minute. He'll look after you. And then I jumped in the shower because obviously the detectives didn't want to let me shower, but I was gonna. So I had a shower. I said, come and have a squiz, come watch me. Had a shower and then taken to the watch house in Darwin City.
Yeah. So that's about where I obviously we'll talk about what went on after that, but that was, I think I mentioned last time, where I got wind of it. It's, where I got a phone call, and I'd just gotten off the phone with a mate in Alice, and that's where it was. Mate, Rolfe's in custody for murder. And I went, no, he's not. I've just spoken to blah 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 down in Alice. It's all sweet. There's no, mate. I'm telling you, I'm at the watch house. I'm looking at the screens. He's on 137 murder, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing. But that was just insane. But I think. So we've covered off now that we've gone through that. You've now been arrested. Do you want to just tell us what happened from there?
So in the cells that night, obviously it's a bit surreal, but you also do feel a bit of comfort because you've worked in the watch houses before. You do have that level of comfort. So I'm put into a cell at the back, obviously by myself, processed. You get your fingerprints done, you get all your photos taken, all that kind of stuff. I'm sitting in a cell for a few hours, and for the first few hours, it's just you can enjoy the quiet time. But again, I was only there for 5 hours. Initially, myself and I was obviously pretty off it, so I treated the watch house staff didn't give them the time of day. But then once you calm down, you realize it's just the detectives, the watch house staff. They didn't want to be involved in that at all, and you could tell. Then a couple of times people came in, one of the detectives came in, tried to get my phone PIN code off me, told him to beat it. Another they come in and kind of ask you details about if you were to get bail, where could you go, kind of thing. Professional Standards Command came in at some point, gave me some paperwork. I don't even know what that was. I can't remember. I think it was the suspension paperwork. Then after 5 hours, I get walked out to the watch house front desk, and in Darwin City, if you guys can remember, you can from the front desk you can kind of see out through to the another set of offices. So in that hallway, which wasn't technically the watch house, it's more the police station part of it. That's where my mum was. So my mum was there. Luckily, the police chaplain had come down, and a couple of the boys were there, just sitting with her, because obviously she's freaking out. She doesn't know what's going to occur. Then what happens, probably the worst part of the night, obviously, was that the police let me know that they've denied me bail. So my bail's been denied. So I'm thinking, obviously, I'm on my way to jail and whatnot. But we managed to call the on-call judge. I think we did briefly talk about it. To call the on-call judge. He was read out the statement of facts at the time, which is just a description of what was seen on body-worn footage. He immediately gave me bail, but part of the bail conditions, the police mentioned to him that if I was to get bail, they needed me to be out of the NT. So I had to return to Canberra for my bail. So that night, as I think we mentioned again last time, walked out of the watch house, and before I'd even left, the police had released to the media the information that I'd been bailed. So there's another security risk right there. So we had to organise some security to get from the watch house to the hotel, moved rooms in the hotel to make sure, just to put something in place in case the room were bugged, because you can't put anything past the cops. During my time in the watch house, they'd seized my phone, my mobile phone. So now I have no way to connect to my support network or anything like that. But we get to the hotel, spend the night. I remember just because it was about coming up on when the bottle shop was closing, when we were when I was just gotten bailed, but obviously there's a long time to process you getting out. So I yelled out to one of the boys to run down to the bottle shop and just get us some beers. So we went back to the hotel and had a couple of beers, but it was just surreal. Got bailed, got back to the hotel, and I'm thinking this is all going to get sorted out soon. It can't not get sorted out. Next morning, I'm on a flight to Canberra, and you fly from Darwin. I think you fly from Darwin to maybe, I don't know, Brizzy or Adelaide, and then on to Canberra. As soon as you get out of the Adelaide airport, there's already media and reporters waiting for you, following you, taking photos immediately. In Canberra, the same things at the airport. And then they're already at the front of my house, on my parents' house in Canberra when we get back there. And that's where, my old man was waiting at home because he hadn't come up to Darwin. So then we get back to the house. There's some reporters at the front of the house telling them to beat it, and then you're back home in Canberra, and it's all just surreal.
Yeah,
mate.
Sorry, you go, Schulte.
Yeah, mate. Just a couple of things. I mean, obviously, I'm really, really shocked. The fact is, being a police officer is one of the biggest honours I ever did. Putting that badge on, integrity, being impartial, all that sort of thing. They trained us in how to do that. All right, and then they've gone completely on the back against what they trained us to do. They just went completely everything they taught us. They've just wiped the floor with it and gone, no, we're going to do this. It pisses me off because it makes every police officer look bad. Do you know what I mean?
100%. And it still hasn't been dealt with. And that's why I think it's such the NT police, I think we all know, is struggling so hard right now. And therefore that flow-on effect hurts the civilians in the NT because all these issues that you just mentioned, Schulte, they haven't been dealt with. They haven't faced up to it. If you fuck up, if you have a problem, you need to deal with the problem. It does not just go away. Like is often the case in the NT, you kind of just ignore it. So and you're exactly right, because there's a number of, not to mention the bosses. Okay, if you say, let's say the chief minister hypothetically was like, I want this guy arrested. If you're a strong police officer, if you're a strong commissioner, you just go, who cares? Don't care what you think, mate. Now and then you lower it down. If you're a commissioner, because we know that there was a meeting with the commissioner of the police at the time, with a number of commanders, assistant deputy commissioners. They had the meeting. I think this might have been on the Wednesday. This was when the detective that actually arrested me, who was in charge of the investigation, or was on paper in charge of the investigation, he made notes on that morning saying there's not enough evidence to arrest. We need to slow it down. He then goes to the meeting. There's the commissioner of police, a number of other executive. They have a meeting. The commissioner then leaves. The detective is brought in, and he's ordered to arrest me. So from the same case, if the chief minister, if he did say, put pressure on you to arrest, and you're a commissioner of police, that's actually a good commissioner of police and strong, you say, don't care what you think, mate. If a commissioner or an executive member orders you to arrest and you don't believe in it, you just tell them to beat it, because it becomes basically an unlawful arrest if it actually gets pushed and investigated properly.
You can't be ordered to arrest.
Exactly.
This is the thing. The office of constable holds the power of arrest. That's the individual person. You can't be ordered to arrest. You've got to believe on reasonable grounds yourself to execute your... No.
100%. And the notes show it. There was 101. Exactly. We know this. And the police notes show that the order was made. After the order was made, that detective that said, there's not enough evidence. There's no evidence that's come in the last few hours. Just that order. He then says, I believe on reasonable grounds. So we know what that means. It's his covering his ass. He's doing what the bosses are telling him to do. He's rolling over.
Yeah.
But he has to live with that. So yeah, you're exactly right. And there's a number of police officers involved who have all just rolled over, I believe, and I think they're suffering for it, as they should.
Yeah. It's the amount of times people put in those predicaments, and it's just fucking shocking.
It's hard, and I understand a lot of people they feel this pressure, and there's financial pressure because it's the job. There's a lot of other pressure, but at the end of the day, you have to be strong enough to deal with it. Like, you're a cop, you're a person. At the end of the day, like, it's like the old peer pressure thing from you're a child. Like, you just get over it, get past it, do the right thing. The right thing might be hard. Do it.
Yeah.
So that's the rant.
No, well, it's good. And I'll just cover off on a couple of things for those listening along. People might think, the Chief Minister runs the Northern Territory. That's not correct. In Australia, we have the separation of powers. I've mentioned it a couple of times now on the podcast. He's elected to run the administration of the Parliament, and that's fine. But Australia's run on rule of law. We don't have a dictator in charge who orders everyone around. It doesn't happen. The Commissioner of Police is commissioned to run the police force in accordance with the Police Administration Act. It's also very funny. I work in incident management now. I train it. I work in it with the RFS. We're trained forever. Don't get bogged in the weeds. Lead the strategy. Lead the intent. You don't lead the strategy. No one above the rank of absolutely at the highest level should have been superintendent, should have been saying anything about arrest. What should have been happening was that the commissioner could have put that through an intent, which stands, general order stands, so it's already there. Conduct a thorough investigation and act on the evidence. Just do your job. I'm not telling you how to do your job. It's an operational matter. It's got nothing to do with me as the Commissioner of Police. Even to the point, the Commissioner could have turned around and could have dealt with the tension in the community and gone and brought the temperature way down by going, this matter will be investigated very thoroughly. These detectives are, experienced homicide detectives are going to carry out an investigation. The coroner will, as per the law, carry out an inquest into this matter. The information I have at this stage is that a brief of evidence will be presented to the coroner, and the coroner will make their determinations and carry out their inquest from there. As this is an ongoing active investigation, there's nothing further I can speak about. And the reason for that is it's inappropriate for me to speak in public about matters that are still under investigation because I don't know the outcome. And just pour water on it, bring the temperature down and go, we understand this is a tragedy. A young man's lost his life. Do all that. That's the job of the police commissioner. Secondly, one of your employees is now under investigation for murder. Throw some fucking welfare around him. Don't get bogged in the weeds. The major crime have got that. And PSC are going to be probing their style in. Yeah, sure. Okay, it can be overlooked by ICAC, and that's like, yeah, fucking cool. After we've done all our shit, we'll give you what we did and you can review it. Fuck off. You don't dictate anything to us. Yeah. And this is what people get so scared about. Police are so used to having the shit kicked out of them in court and not fighting back and go, nah, tough. Police administration, we're the authority on that. Thanks. Thanks for your input. Appreciate your opinion. Fuck off.
Yeah.
And that's
100% agree.
But they bend. They just bend and bend and bend. And they're the ones that should have turned around and gone, hey, ICAC, what you're suggesting is unlawful. So if you want to flirt with attempt to pervert the course of justice, that's on you. But I'm sorry.
Yeah, and not to mention that. Exactly, and not to mention the day after he had that meeting, the head of ICAC then went to that protest in Alice Springs, and that's when he said, cheered about, if you don't say Black Lives Matter, you're guilty of corrupt behaviour. And he actually had to remove himself because there was such an uproar from the investigation, from the oversight. And what you're talking about now, like the Commissioner of Police, we've been told, was in the room with multiple police officers watching the body-worn video in slow motion, going like, tell me, don't you think that's unlawful? That's excessive. So he's actively involved. And after I was found not guilty way down the line, we were told that he gripped up all the investigators and just blew up at them like, how on earth did you not get him, kind of thing. But it's messy how it all occurred, and it's messy that these guys didn't have the spine to stand up and do the right thing. It's just made a mess, and it hasn't been dealt with.
No. And like that upper level management, that shows a level of oafishness. And I mean oafish in that you can be a bully, but you're not correct. Like
exactly.
The coppers at the Link Cafe siege coronial inquest, or the inquiry following that, it was hypercritical of executive members engaging in operational decision making, or even remotely trying to influence the operational outcome of that matter. And I don't think they did very much. Like, I don't think that the senior levels did play too much in that operational space. But even ones that could be perceived to have been dabbling in that space got their bottom smacked in the coronial inquest. So to me, like, the coroner, and we'll get to the coroner, that's down the track, but I mean, there should have been big bottom smacks for all the interference. There should have been probably recommendations to carry out investigations into behaviour carried out, but who knows what. But
Yeah.
this doesn't seem very complicated to me, and I'm not necessarily. I mean, I'm a relatively experienced detective sergeant. That doesn't make me the bloody know all of anything. But I mean, if I can see this so clearly, I guarantee you that more experienced members of the police force and anyone with any time in criminal investigation and the law completely understands what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it just blows my mind. But mate,
Yeah.
we've rambled a good little tangent there. But I think what we're talking about is the human experience of you've been arrested, you're on bail, you're now in Canberra. Tell us about that.
So down in Canberra, and obviously I hadn't been really back in Canberra since. So this is 2019. I left Canberra in 2010, for the army and then for the police. I'd returned for a bit here and there, but Canberra was not like my home anymore. I had a house in Alice Springs. I've been there for the last 3 years, and that's where my home was, where all my people were, my support network, and I had a lot of mates from the army all spread out from around Australia. But Canberra really wasn't it for me. So the first few weeks was surreal, and it kind of just felt like, okay, I'm having a bit of forced rest right now, and it's all going to sort itself out. But after a few weeks, there's kind of you're just waiting, and there's nothing happening. Obviously, there's a lot of shock. A lot of people already, it was big in the news who I was. So I was kind of like isolating myself a fair bit, which is fine by me. But the family side, it doesn't just affect me, because everyone, especially everyone that's close to my family members, they all know about it, and so it's like affecting my family real bad. After a few weeks, it kind of is. You kind of just start getting stir crazy, and you're waiting to get some information in. But as you know, like in an investigation like this, it doesn't come for months and months and months. So we're even chasing. It takes us weeks to even get our hands on the body-worn video from me and my legal team. And I remember there was a bit of like fighting between us and the cops, and we finally got the body-worn video. And I remember sitting down and watching it with my lawyers, and we were all just going, because there's that worry. Even though I know that it was a clean shoot, even though I know that I did the right thing, there's a worry that what does the body-worn show? Am I looking left when I'm turning to the right? So like, is it looking one way and the other? We watched the footage, and we kind of just were confused. We were just like, what? How? I remember my lawyers thinking, oh, this is going to be the easiest case we've ever had if it even gets to trial. And we started thinking along those lines that this is going to have to get dropped. So once I got the body-worn footage, there was because again, it was surreal for a couple of weeks. Then you're starting to get stir crazy, getting worried about what body-worn shows, because maybe it just looks really bad. Something completely innocent can look bad by a different angle. We see the body-worn footage and we go, oh, we're all sweet here. It shows what happened to the majority of the incident. But then we started getting we started hearing things from back in the police force. And this is probably why they didn't want me in the NT. Because even from Canberra, the investigators have probably forgot by this point that computers and the internet and phones are real, because I can still communicate with people in the NT. So I've got a new phone, I can still talk. So I'm starting to hear information. This is where I start hearing about like the investigators that got sent down to Alice, refused to arrest me. I started hearing all this dodginess was going on. So we started to get worried about that. I guess I started to get worried about the corruption in the case. And being a member of the police force, I guess I didn't have that belief, which a lot of people do have, and they should be allowed to have. And it would be good if it was real. That belief in the police force, that it is all good, that it's a righteous organisation. I think we know that that's the goal, but the organisation is full of people and people are fallible. So I started realising it kind of like logically, what was the situation I was in, and I kind of refused to be helpless. So I started thinking about worst case scenarios and how to deal with the worst case scenario. So I was like, okay, what's the worst case scenario for me? The worst case scenario for me is that the police manipulate the evidence. I get locked up for 25 years. And I was like, can I deal with that? Can my family deal with that? And I was like, my family can't deal with that. I was like, I can probably deal with that. I don't want to deal with that. So I'm going to put some things in place. So I remember I got a friend who was his missus was a journo, and I sat down with her, and the agreement was this: I'm going to give her my statement, and I'm going to give her the body worn video. Or I think she actually already had the body worn video from the police somehow. So I'm going to give her my statement. She's going to have the body worn video. She is not going to do anything with that. I'm going to hold on to that USB. She's going to cut it into like an interview format. I'm going to spread around that USB with the footage and basically my statement to a number of my trusted people. And if my bail got revoked or if I got found guilty, they were going to release that video with the truth. That was my action on, because if you had my statement and you saw the video, even if I got locked up, I guarantee you I wouldn't be locked up for long. But there's a chance that footage could get, there is a chance it's happened, like worse things have happened, that footage gets disappeared. So I was kind of like just working on control, like putting actions on place to protect myself if the police revoke my bail, or if I get, because if they're acting like, you can deal with jail for a little bit of time. It's boring. A lot of scumbags deal with jail for a long, long time, and they get through it. You're going to get through it, but can your family get through it? Do you want to get through it? So I was putting things in place to, control the potential outcomes. So I did that, spread the USB around with the instructions that if I do get locked up, if I do get found guilty, pump this out there. Because once the truth is out there, I couldn't imagine I would stay in jail for long, because my family wouldn't be able to deal with it. So I did that, and then it just becomes this real weird, slow rule. Obviously, how old am I? I was 28 years old. I was 28, I think, living with my parents. So back at home after 10 years away, not a ideal situation. Under stress, not only on myself and the whole family. So it was like obviously a pretty stressful time, like not ideal at all. So I'm trying to maintain not a positive outlook, but a fine outlook, a strong outlook. Because if I started to break down, I think my parents, especially my mum, would see that as a sign of I must be concerned about the outcome, when it was never really about that. I knew that legally, looking at once we eventually got the evidence, we're all going to be fine. But it wasn't about that. You're just feeling you're just angry. You just feel like a loser sometimes. You feel like there was no reason to get up. But I tried to do all the right things. I'd wake up, I'd walk my dogs, because I had dogs, so you have to walk them. So it's good to have those responsibilities, because they were the only reason I had to get up. So I woke up, would walk the dogs, work out, tick that box, and then I'm basically the dogs have been walked, I've worked out, I've got to walk the dogs again at the end of the day. And I'd basically just be getting through the day that way. Eventually, I started volunteering at some at a homeless shelter down there, just to do something, and the people there didn't recognise me for a while. When they did start to recognise me, there was a bit of security issues for the staff, so I stopped doing that. Started volunteering and working in a warehouse down there just to be busy, just to get out of the house. But it actually took, I think, the average time from arrest to committal is either 3 or 6 months. It wasn't until 9 months, so no, longer than that, September, I believe, so shooting is November 2019, September 2020 is when we get to committal. So the committal is where, as you guys know, that the basically the prosecution case at that time gets presented, and we finally start to seeing some evidence, some part of the file against us, the majority of the file against us. For the committal, I was able to just watch it by video link in Canberra. We don't really present our case at all, but we get to see the police case. And this is where I believe they presented their file, and it was something like approximately 50,000 pages to get through. But yeah, then we get to the committal in Canberra, and that's where we see their main case. But it gets real hard in waiting for that time.
Mate, I can't comprehend it. We've all had little investigations here and there that eventually were dealt with, but the anxiety was bad enough in that. So, mate, I take my hat off to you there. That's the anxiety, and like you say, that what did you do with your house? Like, you've got furniture and belongings in Alice Springs, and you can't be there. What'd you do with that?
Yeah, so it was one of those. So it was one of the ones where like it was a police house that they were like sorting out the rent for. You can either take the extra money or take a police house. I took a police house. So it was their house. So I had to pay for removalists to get my kit out and send it down to Canberra. So I had to get one of the boys over to just like throw all my kit in a removalist place and send it down to Canberra for storage. And then never saw the house again. So you're dealing with that admin as well. I remember on the Tuesday that I got directed to fly to Darwin because I had dogs, and to fly your dogs, you need to get that little certificate from the vet. Even then, the cop's like, you can't leave your house, you can't do this, you can't do that. And I was like, get fucked, mate. I was like, I'm dropping. So I took my dogs that day. I took my dogs straight to the vet, got that certificate, dropped them off at my mate's house. And even that stuff, I think the commissioner, the assistant commissioner down there, I think she was like, we'll pay for your flights, we'll pay for the dog flights to get down to Canberra and stuff. And that never occurred. So you got to sort out that admin as well, like emptying your house from removalist stuff, and getting the dogs back to Canberra. But all the boys were good about it. But the bosses did not lift a finger to assist with any of that. And their excuse was the whole time, we can't like contact him because he's under investigation, this and that. I think I mentioned as well, there was one liaison officer that would call me every something like 6 months, like, you okay? And I'd be like, no. They'd be like, oh, okay. Sweet. Yeah. Do you need me to do anything? I'm like, yeah, heaps. Oh, can't really do it. Can't do anything. See ya. Yeah. Cool, mate. That was it. So,
sorry, you keep going, mate.
So I guess so we get to the committal, which is actually good because you finally get to you finally move forward a little bit. And we see the police case against us. So we have this 50,000-page file, but we haven't got the time to go through it just yet. So we basically get to the committal and kind of see what's what. This was the case, I guess, at the end of the day. The police had, and the DPP, had decided that the first shot was justified. The second and third shots were not justified. Now, the non-intelligent way to look at that, which because it hasn't actually been investigated properly, is that there was a first shot, and then 2.6 seconds later there was a second shot that was not justified, and that 2.6 second gap is the issue. But their argument was this: the first shot was justified for 6 reasons. Kumjai Walker had a propensity for violence. He'd previously attacked police with an axe. I was aware of this. He had an edged weapon. He had attempted to stab me, and he had stabbed me, which therefore means he was likely ready and able to stab my partner. That's why the first shot was justified. They then said that the second and third shots were unjustified because Kumjai Walker was on the ground at that time, and their argument was that he was incapacitated or under control. But after the first shot, Walker and my partner don't hit the ground for another full second. So it's only 1.6 seconds between hitting the ground and the second shot, and another 0.5 seconds between the third shot. So if you're looking at human performance, which was never addressed during the trial, because we only in the NT and probably across Australia were so far behind the times. We were like, defensive tactics manual says this, defensive tactics manual says that. There was no psychology or physiology of combat or human performance. So in a calm environment, it takes a normal person 0.25 seconds to 0.5 seconds to even identify a change in circumstances. And then it takes another 0.5 to 1 second to make a decision on how that occurs. So if there's only 1.6 seconds between Kumjai hitting the deck in the second shot, there's basically 0% chance you could ever prove intent changes from. So their argument was that my intent changed from preservation of life, protecting myself and my partner, to then murderous intent within that time frame. They're looking at 1.6 seconds. Impossible. Anyway, that's their case. Their case was based off 3 main things. Not that it really mattered, but they used the Sarge out there, the Sarge of Yuendamu Station made a statement. And it didn't really matter, but it's obviously a media game. It's a narrative game. Her statement ended up being that basically I, and therefore IRT, but at my behest, basically disobeyed orders and went out and arrested Kumanjai against her orders. That's all well and good, except that the DPP case was the first shot was justified. So basically, who cares either way? What happened? It's a legal case, but we're playing a different game here in this case. So that's her statement. Basically, I disobeyed orders. I took control of IRT and went out there and went off the reservation. Her statement ends up being picked apart because she writes in her statement or gives in her interview, multiple interviews, that she didn't take any notes in regard to the shooting. But we managed, once we eventually go through the 50,000 pages, we find a small note by basically a minor investigator involved in this case, who received a phone call before her first statement given the day after, or maybe either on the Sunday or the Monday, from her lawyer. She'd gotten a lawyer, and the lawyer told this investigator that, hey, this Sarge has created a chronology of events. She's written down a chronology of events to assist her with the interview. She's going to bring it to the interview, i.e. notes. On the Sunday after the shooting, she'd gone into a police station on a police computer and written out pages of notes, which she then told the police about and took to her interview. The gist of those notes is completely different from what her final evidence ended up becoming. The gist of those notes was that she had directed us to go out to community with a zero tolerance approach and with orders to arrest Walker. We brought this up later down the track, and basically she had to get protected from the prosecution, put in some protection in place to try and prevent her from getting charged with perjury by asking her on the stand, did you intentionally not tell the truth? To which she answered no. So she's admitting she didn't tell the truth in her statements. That's one of the backdrop of the story, I guess, that I got committed to trial on. The other two pieces of evidence were an American use of force expert called Jeffrey Alpert, and it's his, I guess he's an academic whose job is to be a use of force expert, and an NT use of force trainer who we'll call an expert because eventually he gets utilised as a use of force expert. We should start with the NT use of force, the NT police use of force trainer. He basically got brought in early on in the investigation, and his statement is exactly the same basically as the Americans. They're both the same statement. First shot justified, second and third shot not justified. That's basically it. The issues with the NT use of force guy, there was numerous issues that come up later, was that he was basically a member of Operation Charwell. So Operation Charwell was the investigation team against me, and their mission was to, the mission line was actually just to gather a brief of evidence in support of the charges against me. Now, I was never a detective, and you guys could prove me wrong, but that to me looks like incredibly biased. I've always had an issue with that mission statement, to collect a brief of evidence in support of the charges. That kind of seems to be swaying in a biased manner already, but I'm not a detective, so I don't know.
Well, I am.
Yeah. Well, I would love to hear your ideas.
So, an investigation is a search for the truth. It is literally a search for the truth. You do not have any interest. I've used the word 1,000 times. It's disinterest. We are not interested in the outcome. You investigate completely. You include what we call inculpatory, which means evidence that supports an offence, and exculpatory, which is evidence that does not support an offence. You investigate absolutely every line, every avenue of inquiry that you have, and when you come to a complete end and you've worked out everything that you need to know about this matter, you then you run that through and you decide whether or not there is a prima facie case of evidence. I know I've harped on about this prima facie case, but that's where you get it. You look at everything that you've gathered, you complete what I call the diamond. So you start at the top of the diamond and you start investigating, and you work your way down the diamond, and your lines of inquiry will branch out, and they will start to increase. So your fingers move apart, and you work down the diamond. And then when you get halfway down that, you start to get to a point where you're starting to investigate things that are starting to come back on itself. It's starting to complete the circle, so it'll complete the diamond. So once you get to the two side points of the diamond, you move down the diamond until you get right to the bottom, and you've completed a completely thorough investigation. There are absolutely no more possible lines of inquiry. Once you've done that, you put all of that information and all that evidence out in front of you, and that's where you make your determination as to how you act. You never go out and find evidence to support something. What you do is you go out and find the evidence. So if that's a true mission statement from an operation, it just all of this breaks my heart. This is taking me back to 2019, where I was the most loyal bloody mate. I loved that organisation. I believed in what I was doing. I knew it was a hard job, but I knew that it was we were doing the right thing in a world where a lot of wrong shit went on. And this is why it breaks my heart, because they trained me, and a very, very well-known detective who I mentioned, his name's Scott Pollock, Detective Superintendent Scott Pollock. He mentioned at my detective training course as a senior sergeant, officer in charge at the time as a major crime, he said it's a search for the truth. We must remain completely and utterly impartial. There is nothing that we have to add to this investigation. Our job is to extract all of the evidence, inculpatory, exculpatory, just like I said, and provide that. So anyway, that's
so
my
it's crazy, because everything I say, obviously, it's going to be looked at, and it's being looked at because I've said these things before. I've said worse things, or not worse, but more what would seemingly be crazy or wild things before. There will be no negative outcome against me. If I was to be lying on this in this chat, there would be cease and desist letters. There would be defamation cases against me by the investigators involved or by the NT police. None of this will come. Everything I do is based off evidence that I have. I have all the receipts, all the evidence. So I have from the police the operational Charwell management organisation list, which has the mission statement there. So I have it all to back it up. It's all public. It's basically all publicly available. So that was, and talking about the prima facie case, already by this point, through the initial statements, because I didn't give a police statement. It got messy. I was there to give a internal statement, and I got sent away. Got offered an EROI, a criminal interview later, and I understand normally. I know there's some thinking of, if you're a police officer and you've done nothing wrong, give the statement. It didn't feel right, and I'm glad I didn't, because obviously the investigation was gone a certain way by this point already. My version of events, the basic version of events, was captured on the body-worn video. I said he was stabbing me, he was stabbing you. I had been stabbed. That's all captured on evidence. And if you look at the body-worn video later down the track, there's a further description between me and a couple of the boys about what had occurred. So basically the immediate version of events already is there. And basically, so I hadn't given an EROI, but the other police officers there, the one in the room mentioned that he, at some point, like obviously we'd been attacked, he didn't have Walker under control. He heard some sounds, didn't realise he'd been shot, then he realised he'd been shot. By the third shot, he still wasn't under control, because it's after the third shot that they're still fighting that the other police officer in the room still yells out, stop fucking around or I'll smash you. That's after the third shot, because they're still fighting. Another police officer outside the door, he comes into the door, he sees the fight going on. He says, I actually see the second and third shot occur while the other two are still fighting on the ground. So there's still, not to mention, the other police officer on the room has a cut on his chest near his armpit, and his his uniform's cut. So there's all this evidence that is kind of supports my statement or my version of events. But basically, going back to the NT use of force expert, and he's providing a statement saying that shot one's potentially justified, he says. Shot 2 and 3, definitely not. back at the start, when after I'd been arrested, there was discussions amongst the team of who to use, and they decided to bring this guy in as a assistant, basically, to a real expert. And his job was going to be to provide background information on NT police use of force training, which is fair enough. The head of professional standards command at the time actually had an issue with him, saying, "Hey, I believe there could be a perception of bias due to his role, due to his history." I believe he was the head of, he was involved in some form of training when I was going through college. And the investigators said, basically, they responded going, "No, it's all good. He's not going to be the use of force expert. We have someone at a much higher standard than him. He's just going to assist, giving the background of the training." But he's then brought on as a key part of Operation Charwell. He's one of the managers in the teams. And he then travels to Yuendamu with the other investigators, and he's basically just embedded with them with that mission. We argued that there was bias there. They argued that there wasn't. He's now come out and said potentially there was unconscious bias that he held in his role. But basically, he says the investigators had nothing to do with his decision-making process. But again, we have notes where this guy is, and I'm going to say it in my words, and then we'll get back to like more evidence based off Scott Pollock, who you just mentioned before. It's a shared opinion that his incompetence was so high that he actually had to get one of the head investigators to reach out to Queensland Police to get a copy of their use of force expert evidence template because he didn't know how to write it. And in fact, everyone was so against him. We had photos of from police officers in his unit he'd left his computer open one day, and on his computer was the how to be an expert witness, the documents within Australia. And they got sent to us. So he didn't know how to do the report. He was embedded in the investigation team. Down the track, he gets to a point where another police officer, Scott Pollock, finds him to be unqualified, utilising the old training, the wrong evidence. He didn't have access to the whole evidence, and he was just wrong about a number of factors. The third piece of evidence that was used against me was the American expert statement. Jeffrey Alpert, he was found early on, again, not too long after the arrest. An American expert, an academic who is big in America for giving use of force evidence, often against police. But the investigators found him and they reached out to him. They gave him, and this is all again back to my notes, they basically tell him what's the go. They go, "We have a police officer, he's been charged with murder." They start engaging him in emails, but they say, "We need to talk offline about a number of things. We need to make sure you're the right fit. If you're not a good fit, we won't be able to clear you for the bosses and therefore get paid." He responds and says, "Well, hey, whatever you do, don't talk to this expert in the US, a guy called Bill Lewinsky, who runs the Force Science Institute." He says, "Don't speak to Bill Lewinsky because he will clear your police officer. He will justify this shoot." What that immediately does is shows that this expert has bias.
Yep.
And he knows what the goal is. He knows the goal without having seen the evidence yet. He knows the goal is to support the case of murder. There's some other chats going on the phone. They end up having some phone calls, and they agree that he can be an expert. They send him a qualifying letter. And if you guys have got the qualifying letter somewhere, but if you saw the qualifying letter, your chat barbs earlier about being disinterested, this qualifying letter would blow your mind. I read this letter, and if I didn't know me, I would have thought I was a piece of shit. Because before any evidence has been tested, it basically says, Rolfe's cowboy officer, he disobeyed all these orders. He went out there rough and did this and did this and did it. So it was already painting the picture. So it's based off Jeffrey Alpert, NT use of force trainer, and the sergeant's statement out there. We see this case, and in the committal, we don't really get a chance of rebuttal. But we go back and we start. I'm a cop, and I was a good cop, and I was a good investigator as a general duties cop. So I started going through every single page of that brief. That's where we found out, obviously, about the notes that discredit her own notes that discredit her statement in interviews. We find out about the details about Operation Charwell's mission statements. We find out about some of the issues with the NT use of force experts, lack of competence. But we also find an email between Jeffrey Alpert and the investigation team. And we're lucky that we found this email. He sends an email late one night to the investigative team going, "Hey, mate, I've lost the draft version of my report that you made changes to. Can you send that back to me? And I'm happy to make those changes." 10 minutes later, he sends another email going, "Disregard, found it, I'll make those changes now." If he didn't lose that version for 10 minutes, we never would have pulled on this string.
Yeah.
So then we start pulling on this string, sending more subpoenas, getting more emails, to the point where we have the emails showing that the Operation Charwell investigators were working on a Word document with the American use of force expert, changing it up together, working on the report together. So not only did he get paid $100,000 for this report, he's working on it with the NT investigators, which completely ruins that independence of an expert. Now, before we even get to trial, and probably because we found out about this, I think that he actually gets removed from the case because I think they decided that he wasn't qualified to give criminal expert evidence in Australia because he never had. But as you would know, that would be a horrible day for him and for the NT police force if he was in the box and got cross-examined on those edits, because we never got some of the, for example, we never got the actual draft reports. We never got what was actually edited. We only could see what they never gave that to us. We only found out what was in the emails. So it gets to the point where, he says, the Sarge out there orders the police, the IRT, to arrest Walker. And the detectives go back to them and they're like, "Hey, you've said that she's told them to arrest Walker." It makes the next paragraph a little bit messy. And he goes, "Oh yeah, happy, you good catch. I'll take that whole bit out about her telling them to arrest him." So it gets proper messy like that. But he gets removed. So the three things I've done on committal: American use of force expert, NT use of force or training expert, and the Sarge. In the next few months back in Canberra, we're just waiting for the trial. But we hear this, we hear some whispers from up north that there's a coronial report going on from, I guess we're happy to say his name because it's all public as well, from Scott Pollock. So concurrently, next to the criminal investigation, Scott Pollock had been doing the coronial investigation. So he's basically just analysing the evidence that the criminal team had found. He came up with a number of issues, and he ended up bringing that to the attention of the investigators or the assistant commissioner in charge of the investigation. A few of the issues were this. He basically found that the bias involved with editing those emails that we just talked about, he found the same thing, unacceptable. He found the NT use of force trainer was using outdated information, was not qualified as an expert, was biased, and was wrong about a number of issues. He also found that there was evidence that had not been passed on to either expert, including that the other police officer in the room had that cut in his arm or on his armpit, and that his shirt had been cut. Major piece of evidence in the case, in the shooting case, where my argument is that the offender was trying to stab my partner after stabbing me, and there's evidence that supports that. And not only was he never, there's photos of it from others, and that police officer had the photos and presented it to the police. Not only was he never interviewed about that cut, that information was never passed on to any of the experts. His shirt was eventually tested, and it said, from a textiles expert, and that cut in his shirt, likely from a edged weapon similar to the scissors, same per the cut in his armpit. So there's a lot of bias going on. There's a lot of evidence that's not being passed on. And Scott Pollock passed it up to the chain of command, going, hey, not saying this is happening on purpose, but just for the purposes of a professional investigation, this needs to be addressed. He ends up getting berated by the executive at that point, and basically accused of trying to, and I didn't know Scott Pollock, I've never met him. To this day, I've never met him and never talked to him. He ends up getting berated by the executive and basically kicked off the case. And then he goes on, because he's had, you would know more than me, I've only heard things about him, but he had this long, amazing career, and then he gets treated like that, kicked off the case. Basically for what he stood up and was like, this is not right. But at first off, he was like, mate, this is just not professional. This needs to get done properly. And then it became very obvious what was occurring. He got kicked off the case. They replaced him with another police officer of higher rank. That police officer then completely rewrites the coronial report. So Pollock ended up writing in his report that this was the most biased police investigation that he's ever seen in his time, and that there was another case similar, a tea tree shooting decades ago, where the bias was the same but opposite. But the bias was in favour of the police involved. The judge said, or the judge made findings, that the bias was so much in favour of the police shooting that no one will ever know what actually occurred, and that the outcome of this should be at minimum internal discipline for the investigators, if not more. Scott Pollock finds that the same situation is here, but reversed with a bias against the police officer, myself. But he gets removed from the case, and then they get this other police officer on, and they rewrite the coronial report completely 180 degrees, supporting the investigation. None of the stuff that he has mentioned is in it. We start finding whispers of this. We subpoena the coronial report. The commissioner at the time refuses to give the report over. And we have to go to court and start fighting the commissioner of police to get this report over. We end up winning that court case, getting all the drafts of the reports, and you can see on the dates that there's numerous drafts. Scott Pollock himself has numerous drafts. And then he gets kicked off and he goes on to this other police officer. But you can see the date, so it completely changes 180, and then you can see the date that the police realize that we know about the reports, because then they start injecting a few paragraphs of Scott Pollock's report back in to the final report. Again, if we never found out about this, we would never have, like, it would have always been hidden. Not only did the police commissioner fight us having the reports at all, he applied for suppression order, so the media could never know, the public could never know that this occurred. Again, luckily we won that. But as you would know, unfortunately, Scott Pollock got kicked off the case. I would imagine, because he hadn't finished his investigation yet, once you find that the case is a biased case in any way, let alone the most biased case you've ever seen, all three of us know that the way you question someone can affect their answers. And the best, easiest study for this that we all hear is that there's a big group of people watch a footage of a car crash, and then they're separated into three separate groups. One group's asked a question along the lines of, how fast did the first car smash into the second car? The middle group, how fast did that first car hit the second car? And the third group, how fast did that first car bump into that second car? The first group, they say they're always basically saying it was traveling at a faster speed, definitely not the third group. So the way you ask a question, we all know the way you ask a question, you can lead someone. You can push someone one way or the other. It's easy to do so. So I'd imagine that Scott Pollock's next steps would be, he would have to re-interview every witness, because I know police that have come to me and made complaints about how they were interviewed and how, when they gave it just in their witness statements, and how they were interviewed, and how when detectives didn't like their answers, they were basically berated for a different answer. And that's cops who have been in the job for over 10 years. Now, there are a lot of cops involved in this case who are junior, so you can only imagine how that would have occurred, or what that could have done. Again, we'll never know what the true investigation would have brought up, because it's never going to happen, because the damage has been done. So that's the lead up to the trial. So we found out basically the three things that I was committed to trial on are basically already kind of falling apart.
Yeah.
But
I'll
sorry, you guys.
Yeah, mate. Look, one of the things on just a quick question for you. The Damo and I started doing, and we spoke about this in the podcast before, how we started actually um, doing video statements for everybody. The reason being is because that way we can't be showed to lead the people in the investigation and so on and so forth. Were they all interviewed as in on video and audio?
Some of them were. Some were interviewed video and audio, but it gets to the point where before, like up to this point now, I believe the Sarge, for example, has done 5 separate interviews or statements. So there's some statements, there's some interviews, some are done on video, some aren't done on video. Some of the, like what I talked about with the, some are just emails, like emails from the investigators to certain police officers with questions and answers, some of those which have never come as part of the brief. So there's a mix. And even they fucked it completely. And not only this, they forced most of the police officers involved. This is the criminal investigation team. They used the coronial investigation powers to force members to give statements, but utilized it for the criminal case. Now, none of those statements were negative towards me or provided any evidence that was negative towards me. But if they did, we probably could have fought that and none of those statements would have been admissible.
No.
Because they were all coerced. So the whole thing is just incompetent and fucked.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I've known about this for a while and listening to you now. Like, we're at an hour. It's probably not a bad time to sort of wind this one, and then we'll talk about you going through the trial in the next one.
That's a good idea, yeah.
Yeah, but just to sum up, I think the beauty of talking to us, mate, is that, mate, we're ex-NT coppers. We know this shit.
Yeah,
and it just breaks my heart because both of us, mate, we were bright-eyed, bushy-tailed in 2007 when we joined that job. And I would even say when I left, I was still happy enough. I was happy I did it. But it breaks my heart. And I'll mention something that, no, I won't actually. Scott Pollock said, I know Scott Pollock. He mentioned something to me. He was working as a night shift incident controller during the COVID matter. That's how he'd been pulled so far away from investigations. He'd been put in uniform to be a night shift emergency operations center incident controller for COVID. So basically just not doing anything. Yeah. And he was a broken man. And to come from, he was the most prestigious detective in the Northern Territory.
Yeah.
Without peer. There were some excellent detectives in the NT, but he was number one, especially from my point of view and the way when I was trained in 2010 in detective work and then designated and further on down the line. But I know him and I know that he was a consummate professional. And I also know that imagine the heartbreak he's feeling after 30 odd years in the police force. So,
well, there's the thing is like so when we're talking about this case, obviously you guys and me, we all know some amazing NT police officers. Unfortunately, there's just some police officers involved in these cases which just have the ability that they can have to cause damage to a wider organization is insane. So, for example, Scott, he stood up. He was one of the few cops involved. Actually, there's a fair few cops involved, but he was one of the ones that stood up within this case to do what only wasn't the intelligent thing, the professional thing, the legal thing, the right thing. He did the right thing, morally and legally. Yeah. And he was, look what happens to him for it. The pressure was put on him to break him. That's what the NT police often do.
Yeah.
So I guess happy to. It's probably a good time to stop now because then I guess in the lead up next few months, all that's occurring is me just basically trying to get to trial. Because often I think we mentioned before that it's often the defence delaying or causing delays to the trial, but it was just consistent delays by the prosecution to get to the trial. There's some we'll talk about the actual lead up to the trial next time, like starting about like when the trial's getting close. Because you have some, obviously, as you guys know, you have some pre-court or pre-trial court appearances, which are pretty important, which
Yep.
again show some craziness by the NT police and the DPP. But for me back home, I guess the journey from committal to trial was basically, I kind of had a purpose again, and the purpose was to go through, because now I finally had the case. So the purpose was, I'm an investigator. I'm investigating the investigation.
Yep.
And it was there was a purpose again, as kind of as messed up as it was, as much as I shouldn't have been there. But yeah, the damage that it's done to a broader community is rough, because you lose an investigator like Pollock. That's years and years of experience that he could have taught to someone else or to multiple other cops. And it's happened a lot up and down the chain of command, because I know cops that have, I know heaps of cops who have left, who have quit because of this job, because of the shooting. Heaps of cops who have just quit the NT because of the shooting, and they could have been, or they were, amazing senior partners to junior cops. Now, the junior cops coming through have less senior partners. So, again, it's like what we said about the start. Until you address the actual issue, until you identify the issue, shine a light on it and address it and fix it, it's not going away.
No,
that's right.
And mate, it's funny how you talk about the drainage. Sorry, Shelty, just 2 seconds. The guys that could have been good senior partners. Well, I look at my cohort that left, so I'm talking that upper level of the lower, basically the King Dicks of Shit Mountain, for a better term. So you're talking your detective sergeants, your sergeants. The brain drain from that rank, from that rank was massive. I think back to the really long-term senior constables, your up-and-coming sergeants who are probably, on the way to senior sergeant, and some probably higher. Yeah. That cohort was gutted, absolutely gutted.
I think we mentioned it before. There was a lull. There was about a 2-year lull from the arrest, where you just assume that, or a lot of people did assume. Again, a lot of people didn't know me in the police force. The people that did know me knew something was up immediately. But for the majority who didn't actually know me, you just assume I'm in an organisation that is professional, because we're professional. This guy's been arrested for murder. It's been videotaped. Something must have gone wrong on video. Yeah. Everyone assumed that for about 2 years. Then the bottom video comes, and everyone should be able to. Not only do people have a default to truth, that you trust people who you should be able to trust. For example, the police executive. It just makes sense because there was video of it. But once the video came out, I think that's when the real loss of everyone started bouncing or leaving the organisation.
Yeah, mate. One thing I didn't know you back then. I knew of you, of course, especially when I found out about all this. And I remember one of the first things I ever said when I basically, because a lot of people ask me questions, and I said, from what I've seen, I've been an investigator. I've been heavily involved in investigations. I know the policy and procedure and all this sort of stuff. And I turned around and I said to him, the NT police have done not only an injustice to the community, but to Zac, but to the whole organisation. And I saw that without knowing you, just from the information that I was getting. And I said, it pissed me off, because the fact is nobody's going to get an answer.
Exactly, and they're not.
No, they've just completely fucked it. And I was gutted. But this is coming from someone that never knew you. I knew of you, and I looked at the evidence that I had available at me at the time, and I've gone, no, this is a complete injustice to the whole justice system.
Yeah. I think we can cover that. Yeah, I think we might wrap it up. It's an hour and 15.
Yeah, well, happy with that.
So obviously we've covered off on that interim period that would have just been the hardest. People wouldn't think about that, but you got motivated people. You're a motivated bloke. It would have been brutally hard. So I think next time we roll into the Supreme Court trial itself, obviously the time that took, how it was for you being obviously in the stand and accused of these things, and the media attention, and I think we'll cover that off as well. And I remember getting asked, someone said, are we going to do carton of the week? I said, we're not going to do it through while we talk about the investigation. We should not make light of this. We need to get through the serious part. We can obviously do our cop thing later on. There'll be banter and stuff in later episodes, but I think at the moment it's just, I don't want to be trying to be funny in things that are not funny.
Yeah, no, I agree.
No, that's exactly right. There's a time to be serious and there's a time to investigate. And, that's when we put that hat on. So, but anyway, mate, stay on because we can probably kick off with another one. But what do you reckon, Damo? We'll finish this one off and then kick it along.
We'll talk offline, boys. I've got a big day tomorrow.
Yeah,
but no, we'll wrap it up. So that's, episode 3. And, we'll be back next week. So stick around. Coming up, Supreme Court trial and then on to a few others.
Yep, for sure. All right, everybody. We'll see you next time.
All the best.